this is Benita, and I have a really simple and fun watercolor project for you today. I've put away my normal painting supplies, and instead I'm using basic stuff that hopefully you have around the house. If you are a kid or a kid at heart, I want you to be able to follow along with this project. I'm using Crayola watercolors. This is a 16 set of colors. It comes with a tiny little brush. Hopefully you have a bigger brush around the house because I'll be using a bigger brush for these larger letters. But if you only have this one, it'll work. It's just going to take you a little longer to get the paint onto the paper. For the other supplies, I'm using paper from this. It's a Canson mixed media spiral bound pad, and I've just torn the paper out. There's 60 sheets in this one. It's made for acrylic watercolor pen and pencil. It's 9 by 12 and it's 98-pound paper, which just means that's the thickness of the paper. If you don't have something like this, you can use regular printer paper, but it's not going to work quite as well. This paper is thicker and it's also designed to take the paint a bit better. Now for the lettering, what I've done is I've printed this out. I did this online on Google Docs, I think is what I used, and I just put in the word love, but you could use your name. You could turn this into a card that you take a picture of and text to somebody, whatever you want to do. But the idea is to get lettering that is in a block style so you can fill it in with paint. And to do that, you want to set the color to white on the lettering and then have a fine outline in black. And to get this onto this paper, because this paper wouldn't fit in my printer, I just held this up like that. I actually taped it in place so it wouldn't move around on me. And you can hold it up to a bright window. You might need to turn off the interior lights and hold it up to a window where the sunlight's coming in and you can see right through this paper, and then you can trace it. And I just traced it using a regular pencil. None of this has to be perfect. You can actually just write your own lettering if you like to do that. That's also kind of fun. I just wanted to show you a way that you could make a template and have it be personalized if you want to use more of a block style of lettering or more of a fancy cursive or whatever. Or like I said, you can just use your own handwriting. Just make sure the letters have some space to them, you know, so that you have something to fill in with paint. For the other supplies, I have a little spray bottle with water. I do this with all of my watercolor paints because the paints typically dry out in between. This style of paint is called a pan paint, and it's designed to dry out, but you want to get it nice and wet when you use it because then it's going to be easier to get onto your brush. So before you start painting, make sure you spray it with water and that it has a little water sitting on top, and that's going to help the paint be more moist. You'll also want a little container of water for cleaning your brushes. I use a sponge to take off the excess water from my paintbrush. I use rags from an old t-shirt to clean up messes and stuff. You can use paper towels if you have them. I just happen to be really low on them, so I've been using t-shirt rags. I want to mention that these say that they're washable. Well, yeah, somewhat washable, but I would not do this using your nice white towels, or I wouldn't paint on like anywhere near a white carpet or wear really light colored clothing because I think they would stain even though they say that they're washable. Okay, I think that covers everything except for I'm going to use some salt on the lettering up above. Just regular table salt will be fine. And you'll want to come up with a kind of a plan. Doesn't have to be perfect. You can change your mind, but it is kind of fun to think of a design that you want to follow. So I've just written out colors that I'm going to use. This first one's going to be purple and blue, blue and green, yellow and red, red and purple. So, you know, you can pretend that you're designing your lettering, and you can use any kind of color combination you want to. I think that's it. I think I can just go ahead and jump in here. And I am going to use this larger brush. And this is going to be the mixing area for your paint. So this first one is purple and blue. There's two shades of purple in this. There's this one, which is pretty, but it's kind of pale. And then there's this one, which is really dark. I love that purple. And I want you to notice that I'm kind of picking up the paint in my brush, and then I'm adding it to this little puddle. And I'll get some more water. I want a pretty good sized puddle of paint. So pick up the paint, add it to there, and this helps get the paint into your paintbrush better than if you just go like this. You really want to mix it in there. Now when I paint this, I want to have that same idea of kind of having a puddle, except now I want the puddle to be on the paper. And I'll bring this down kind of like that, and then I'm going to switch colors. So I'm going to rinse my brush real quick and go to a blue, and I can just mix the blue right next to this guy. I think this is a blue too. Yeah, it is. Dark blue. Water, picking up paint, making a puddle. And see, this has some, a little puddle right there. And that'll help the two colors blend. Now you can see I'm not being really careful about staying in the lines. You can be very careful if you want to, or you can just kind of be careful. You know, it really doesn't matter. This is all about having fun, not about being perfect. While this is still nice and wet, I'm going to drop the salt onto it. And you don't need a whole lot. You kind of want it sprinkled. I'm not doing a very good job of sprinkling it, but there we go. You can use a whole lot if you want to. You know, maybe use a whole lot on one and then just a little on another. I have some extra salt, so I'll just pile it up there. Now on to my next letter. It's going to be blue and green. So I can take that blue color, picking up paint, mixing these two blues together. The little bit of purple in there, I don't care. And color in that O. So I don't want to go quite halfway around. I think that's about right. I want to make sure I get plenty of green in there. I'll use this area to mix up the green. We've got a dark green. It's actually a nice selection of colors in this little Crayola set. Now see, because my paint is nice and watery, but I'm putting a lot of it on there, it's gonna blend together. And since I have a couple shades here, I'm gonna, ooh, that's a pretty blue. Oh, look at that. I like that blue. So the colors can kind of swirl around. I'm gonna take some of that blue and just put a touch of it right there. And more salt. There we go. On to the next one, which would be yellow and red. Now, when you use yellow, you have to keep it clean, more clean than any other color. And that's because it's easily affected by the other colors. In other words, it gets dirty really fast. You should see the yellows in my regular palette. They look more like green than anything. So yellow and red. I have this orange in between there, so I'm going to use some of that orangey color. Oh, it's more yellow than it is orange. Kind of orangey. And then I'm going to switch to the red. So I've got a couple different reds to choose from. That's kind of pretty. And I think I'll go back to the yellow. And see how I can kind of blend those colors together because it's all still nice and wet. So I'm using a lot of water to do this. And I really think I need just a little touch of that right up in there. Salt, let's see if I have enough here. That's probably good. You gotta put the salt on while it's still wet for it to do its little texture thing. You can kind of see it happening over there. The last letter is gonna be red and purple. So go into this red there. Kind of scooping it up. Pretend that you're scooping up a little scoop of ice cream or something and mix it in with the puddle over here. Let me try this brush just to see what it's like. Oh yeah, it's doable. It's just gonna take you a little longer to fill in the colors. So red and purple. Get some of this purple also. Now I'm trying to do this pretty quickly for this video, but you can be much more careful if you want to, to get the letters more perfect, or you can just be a little more relaxed with it because it is watercolor, and I think watercolor always looks best when you're not trying to make it perfect. Okay, salt. That color's a little weak right there. Not quite enough paint, I don't think. There we go. I think I'm about out of salt. I need just a little bit more. Oh. If you happen to have different kinds of salt, you can play with different kinds of salt. See if you have like the really thick the like kosher salt or even rock salt, you can try it, but this is just regular fine. It's actually sea salt, but you can use regular salt. So that's what I'm going to do for this one. Now for this one, I'm going to do a little different plan. I'll take this away. It's always nice to plan because then that becomes part of the process, and it makes it more personalized. So up here I used colors that were right next to each other. So there's a primary and what's called a secondary color in each of these. Next I'm going to try to get the colors to blend to make a third color. So for this first one, I'm going to use blue and red and try to make purple in the middle. This one, I'm going to use blue and yellow and try to get green from those two. This one I'm going to do, which is actually kind of what I did there. I'm going to do yellow and red and try to get orange. And then this last one, I'm going to just do whatever it is that I feel like doing, okay, at the time. And I could use this smaller brush for this one, because what I want to do is fill this in with water. Now this water is a little bit dirty, and that's okay because I think on camera it's going to help you see it better. For this first part, I had my paper elevated because it's easier for me to work when the paper is angled up a bit like that. For this one, I want it to be flat. And I'm building up these letters with water so that there's actually a standing puddle of water there. Hopefully you can see that. You can tell because the water's a little gray, so you can see it, but it's pretty thick, and I can just make sure, look at it from the side when you do this and make sure that there's a standing puddle of water everywhere inside the letter. Now what I want to do is get a lot of paint on there. Never be afraid of using a lot of paint, especially these Crayola sets. They're pretty inexpensive. So I've got a lot of paint there, and I'm gonna just touch the water, and the water's gonna pull it down. And then I'm gonna go to my other color, red. A lot of paint on there. Touch it. Sometimes the paint's gonna really move, and other times it's not gonna move that much. But what I'm gonna do is leave that for a minute, clean out my brush, and I'm gonna put in water in the next letter. And I can, once I get that done, I can go back and check this, and it's not quite meeting there. So what I can do is drop a little more paint there and hope that it gets up to that blue. And right where they meet, I'm hoping I'll see some purple. And add a little more blue. There, now it's kind of mingling together. This next one needs to be blue and yellow, so back to the blue. Oh, I forgot about that pretty blue. I'm going to use that real pretty lighter blue. Drop it and see what happens. Oh, look at it. It's going all the way down there. And I want to make sure my brush is nice and clean, because remember, yellow gets dirty very fast. It's already a little dirty, but that's okay. I'm going to drop in the yellow and see how far will that move. You can try tapping it to get it to go a little farther. And I think what I need to do is put in a little yellow closer to the blue, and then maybe a little more blue in between there. I think that's going to work better on these really tall, skinny letters. You can also take the end of your paintbrush and run it through the paint. To get the colors to mix together. So I'm going to go back to this one and drop in a bit of red right there. use that same idea of dragging the color up there. Use a little bit of blue right there. Ooh, just like that. Now I'm going to keep going on this, but see how dirty my water is, and everything is getting a little bit dirty here, so it's a good time to take a break and get everything cleaned up, and then I'll finish up these last two letters. I finished up the lettering and it took a couple of hours to dry. Once your letters are dry, you can shake off the excess salt. And I'll make a few observations from this. Up here where I put the salt on, you can see the texture that it left behind. Some areas are more textured than others, but it leaves the texture because the salt is dry when you put it on, and then the salt absorbs water and paint, leaving that texture. And then down here where I put the water on first and I dropped the paint in, I used two colors, and I can identify what third color those color combinations made. Here I used red and blue, and I can see some purple right there and right there. This one I used blue and yellow, and I can see lots of green. Here I used yellow and red, and I can see orange. And then this one I did a repeat with yellow and blue, and it made green. You can do this so many different ways. Use your own lettering. You can use any kind of color combinations that you want to use. It's a really fun and simple process. Now, before I go, I want to show you one final cleanup tip. I've already pretty much cleaned this up, but if your palette is a complete mess, very carefully, these things just come right out like that. So just take those out and set them aside, and then rinse this whole thing and get it cleaned up, and then you can put these back in there, and you're ready to go for the next painting session. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care.